Yeah, it's a little bit awkward that Robin's here. Of course, we're not on the best of terms.
The financial records just dropped, and they're absolutely wild. Christine Brown's new book doesn't just spill tea about Cody's emotional manipulation, it exposes a stunning $120,000 in set perks that completely contradicts everything this family has told us about their financial struggles for over a decade. Picture this scenario for a moment. You're watching a family claim they can't afford health insurance for their children while living in massive homes they supposedly can't maintain. You're seeing wives stress about grocery budgets and medical bills. You're witnessing what appears to be genuine financial hardship playing out in real time on your television screen. Meanwhile, behind the cameras, that same family is enjoying six-figure production perks that would make most viewers' annual salaries look modest. The cognitive dissonance is staggering when you really sit with it. Christine's book reveals that while viewers watched them struggle with basic expenses, the Brown family was receiving substantial compensation and benefits that completely changes the entire narrative we've been fed.
My desire and intention has always been to have a good relationship with Christine. That's what I'm putting forward.
We're talking about perks that could have covered Truly's hospital stay, solved their insurance problems, and eliminated the financial stress that supposedly drove so many of their family conflicts. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Cody is now reportedly demanding that Christine stay silent about certain aspects of their production arrangements. The man who controlled every aspect of her life for decades is still trying to control her narrative even after she's escaped his manipulation web. The pattern emerging from Christine's revelations shows a systematic deception that goes far beyond typical reality TV editing tricks. This wasn't just selective storytelling or convenient omissions. This was an active misrepresentation of their actual circumstances while receiving substantial benefits that would have solved the very problems they were dramatizing for entertainment.
Because these relationships do need to get mended.
We've had such a struggle with this. I'd almost rather just take some time to get in a better place with you and me.
What makes this particularly infuriating for longtime viewers is how the financial stress narrative was used to justify so many of Cody's controlling behaviors. How many times did we hear about moves being necessary for financial reasons? How often were wife conflicts blamed on money pressures when the family was actually receiving significant production compensation? The $120,000 figure isn't just a number. It's evidence of a fundamental betrayal of viewer trust. Every woman who's ever juggled household budgets while watching this family's supposed financial struggles deserves to know the truth about what was really happening behind those carefully crafted scenes. But the real bombshell hiding in Christine's pages isn't just about money. It's about a complete system of control that extended far beyond what cameras captured, involving secret rules and agreements that kept family members trapped in performances that were slowly destroying their authentic selves. And that's when Cody's true colors showed in the most predictable way possible. The moment Christine started revealing uncomfortable truths in her book, the control tactics that defined their entire marriage came roaring back with a vengeance.
Listen, I have this wife. Her name is Robin, and she would never let me do anything naughty.
Sources close to the situation report that Cody has been making demands about what Christine can and cannot discuss publicly. The man who spent decades dictating her daily schedule, her emotional responses, and even her spiritual beliefs, apparently thought he could extend that authority into her post-divorce book deal. The audacity is breathtaking when you consider the timeline. Christine finally breaks free from over 20 years of manipulation, finds genuine happiness with David Woolley, and establishes her own financial independence. But Cody still believes he has the right to control her narrative and silence her voice when it threatens his carefully constructed public image. What's particularly telling is which specific topics reportedly trigger Cody's silence demands. According to insiders, he's not concerned about Christine sharing her emotional journey or discussing their relationship struggles. Those revelations actually serve his victim narrative quite well. The panic sets in when Christine starts exposing the behind-the-scenes production arrangements and financial realities that contradict their public storyline. This isn't just about protecting his reputation anymore. This is about protecting a business model built on manufactured authenticity. When Christine reveals the gap between their public struggles and private perks, she's essentially pulling back the curtain on an entire entertainment operation that depends on viewer belief in their financial hardships. The psychological manipulation embedded in these silence demands follows the exact same pattern that defined their marriage. Cody would withdraw affection and attention whenever Christine stepped out of line, and now he's attempting to withdraw support or cooperation whenever she reveals inconvenient truths about their shared history. But here's what makes this attempt at continued control so particularly pathetic. Christine no longer needs his approval, his affection, or his financial support. The leverage he wielded for decades has completely evaporated, yet he's still trying to operate from the same playbook that kept her compliant for over 20 years. The irony becomes even richer when you realize that Kody's demands for silence are actually generating more attention for the very revelations he's trying to suppress. Every attempt to control Christine's narrative just highlights how much truth he's desperate to keep hidden from public scrutiny. Meanwhile, Christine is discovering something powerful that every woman who's escaped a controlling relationship eventually learns. The person who spent years telling you what you couldn't say or do has absolutely no authority over your voice once you're free from their influence. But the silence demands reveal something even more disturbing about the secret rules that govern this family's entire reality TV existence. Rules that went far beyond normal production guidelines and created a web of control that extended into every aspect of their personal lives. The production rules that Christine reveals in her book read like a hostage negotiation manual rather than standard reality TV guidelines. These weren't just typical don't break the fourth wall instructions that you'd expect from any television contract. These were comprehensive behavioral controls that dictated how family members could express themselves, what topics were off limits, and even how they were allowed to process their own emotions on camera. Christine admits that she spent years lying on camera because the alternative was facing Kody's wrath off camera. The secret rules created a system where authentic emotional responses were essentially punished, while performed compliance was rewarded with continued access to production benefits and Kody's minimal affection. The most chilling aspect of these hidden guidelines involved how family conflicts were managed. According to Christine's revelations, they weren't allowed to address certain systemic issues directly on camera, even when those issues were destroying their family relationships behind the scenes. Instead, they had to redirect genuine concerns into acceptable storylines that maintained the show's central mythology. Think about the psychological impact of being required to perform happiness while experiencing genuine distress. Christine describes having to smile and participate in family ceremonies while internally planning her escape route. The commitment ceremony sand-pouring scene becomes particularly disturbing when you realize she was thinking, "I'm not even going to be staying," while publicly declaring her devotion to family unity. These secret rules also governed financial discussions in ways that protected the production's preferred narrative. Family members couldn't discuss their actual compensation or benefits, which meant viewers were watching manufactured financial stress while the family enjoyed substantial production support that would have eliminated most of their supposed money problems. The rules extended beyond individual behavior into family dynamics themselves. Christine reveals that spontaneous conversations or genuine emotional moments were often interrupted or redirected by production needs. Real family decisions had to be filtered through storyline requirements, meaning their actual lives became secondary to their televised performances. Perhaps most insidiously, the secret rules created a hierarchy of truth-telling, where some family members were granted more narrative freedom than others. Christine describes feeling constantly monitored and corrected when her authentic reactions didn't align with production expectations, while other family members seemed to enjoy more flexibility in their on-camera presentations. The rule system even dictated how they could discuss their religious beliefs and polygamous lifestyle. Despite the show's mission to present a more positive view of plural marriage, family members weren't actually free to share their genuine spiritual experiences or address the real challenges of their chosen lifestyle in honest terms. What emerges from Christine's revelations is a picture of a family trapped not just by their religious beliefs and marriage structure, but by an entertainment contract that required them to betray their own authenticity for over a decade. The secret rules didn't just govern their television performances, they rewired how they could relate to each other and process their own experiences. But the most explosive secret rule Christine exposes involves how the family was required to handle the growing evidence that their church, the Apostolic United Brethren, was engaging in the same abusive practices as the FLDS they publicly distanced themselves from. Let's do some math that's going to make your blood boil. While Christine was sitting in hospital rooms with Truly, terrified about medical bills they allegedly couldn't afford, the Brown family was simultaneously receiving $120,000 in production perks. While Janelle stressed about grocery budgets on camera, they had access to benefits that could have fed their entire extended family for months. While they claimed financial hardship forced them into those massive Flagstaff moves, they were enjoying compensation packages that most American families can only dream about. The financial hypocrisy runs so deep that it essentially invalidates every money-related storyline we've watched unfold over 14 seasons. Remember those dramatic scenes where wives argued about resource allocation? Those tense conversations about who got what share of family income? Those tearful confessions about feeling financially insecure? All of it was theater performed while substantial production benefits flowed into their accounts. Christine's book reveals that the family's relationship with money was completely different behind the scenes than what cameras captured. They weren't actually living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet in the ways they portrayed. The financial stress that supposedly drove so many family conflicts was largely manufactured for storyline purposes while they enjoyed significant financial security through their television contract. This creates a particularly cruel irony when you consider how many viewers related to their financial struggles. Families across America watched the Browns navigate money problems that mirrored their own real hardships, not realizing they were witnessing performances funded by compensation packages that exceeded most viewers' annual household incomes. The insurance crisis becomes especially infuriating when viewed through this lens. Christine describes genuine terror about Truly's medical needs and their inability to provide adequate healthcare coverage. But if the family was receiving $120,000 in production perks, why weren't those resources being directed toward ensuring their children had proper medical protection? What kind of financial priorities allow for luxury production benefits while children lack basic healthcare security? The pattern extends beyond individual financial decisions into the broader narrative they sold to America. They positioned themselves as a working-class polygamous family, making the best of their unconventional circumstances. They invited viewers to see them as relatable people facing recognizable challenges. Meanwhile, they were operating with financial advantages that placed them in completely different economic circumstances than their supposed peers. Even more disturbing is how this financial deception intersected with their religious messaging. They used their platform to promote a lifestyle that they claimed was spiritually fulfilling despite material sacrifices. They testified about finding joy and purpose in simplified living and shared resources, but their actual financial reality included production perks that eliminated most of the material sacrifices they preached about. The $120,000 figure also raises serious questions about production ethics and viewer manipulation. If a reality show's central premise involves financial struggle, shouldn't audiences know when that struggle is being subsidized by entertainment industry compensation? When does selective editing cross the line into fraudulent misrepresentation? Christine's revelations expose how the family weaponized financial narratives to manipulate both viewer sympathy and internal family dynamics. Wives were required to express gratitude for resources that were actually guaranteed through their television contracts, not dependent on Cody's patriarchal generosity. But the financial hypocrisy is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the systematic deception that producer Tim Gibbons discovered was undermining his entire civil rights experiment. Producer Tim Gibbons walked into the Brown family's world in 2009 with a mission that was equal parts ambitious and naive. He genuinely believed he could use their story to reframe polygamy as a civil rights issue and potentially change American law. He wasn't just making television entertainment, he was conducting a social experiment designed to legitimize plural marriage through positive representation. The man had a theory that if mainstream America could see a polygamous family that didn't fit the FLDS stereotype, public opinion would shift toward acceptance and legal recognition. No prairie dresses, no compound isolation, no obvious patriarchal oppression. Just a suburban family with an unconventional marriage structure, navigating relatable challenges while demonstrating that plural marriage could be healthy, consensual, and beneficial for everyone involved. Tim's civil rights framework depended entirely on the Browns being genuinely different from the abusive polygamous sects that dominated public consciousness. He needed them to represent a reformed version of plural marriage that respected women's autonomy, prioritized children's welfare, and operated through genuine choice rather than religious coercion. His entire professional reputation was staked on proving that the Browns represented something fundamentally different from groups like the FLDS. For over a decade, Tim invested his career in documenting what he believed was evidence that polygamy could exist without systemic abuse. He filmed countless hours of family interactions, celebrations, and daily life moments that seemed to support his hypothesis. The Browns appeared to demonstrate that plural marriage could involve educated, empowered women making informed choices about their family structure. But Christine's book reveals that Tim was essentially being deceived from the very beginning. The Browns knew their church, the Apostolic United Brethren, was engaging in the same abusive practices as the FLDS groups they publicly distanced themselves from. They knew their lifestyle involved the same patriarchal control, financial manipulation, and emotional abuse that characterized the very polygamous cultures Tim was trying to prove could be reformed. The devastating reality check came when Christine's departure exposed everything Tim had been fighting against. Suddenly, Cody transformed into exactly the kind of patriarchal abuser that Tim's entire project was supposed to prove didn't exist in modern polygamous families. The controlling behavior, the financial manipulation, the emotional abandonment, the spiritual coercion, all the toxic patterns Tim thought he was documenting the absence of became impossible to ignore. Christine writes that Tim cried when she told him about leaving Cody, and his reaction makes perfect sense when you understand what her departure meant for his professional legacy. She wasn't just ending a marriage, she was demolishing the central premise of his life's work. Every episode he'd produced, every interview he'd conducted, every moment he'd captured of apparent-family harmony was suddenly recontextualized as documentation of an elaborate performance. The civil rights argument that Tim hoped to build through their story completely collapsed under the weight of Christine's revelations. Utah legislators couldn't accept polygamy as a civil rights issue, precisely because it remained entangled with systematic abuse and coercion. Even Christine admits they had to abandon the civil rights framework and focus on abuse prevention instead, which effectively acknowledges that polygamy as practiced couldn't be separated from its harmful elements. Tim's experiment didn't just fail. It backfired spectacularly by providing years of documentation showing exactly why polygamy remains problematic, even in its supposedly reformed versions. Christine's authentic story became the evidence against everything Tim had tried to prove, and the weight of that professional and ethical reckoning ultimately drove him away from the project entirely. But Tim's departure reveals something even more sinister about how the remaining production team has been handling the exposure of systematic lies that built their entire franchise. Christine's most devastating admission isn't about Cody's cruelty or the church's hypocrisy, it's about her own complicity in a decade-long deception that manipulated millions of viewers who trusted her authenticity. She confesses to lying consistently on camera, performing happiness while planning her escape, and participating in ceremonies where she was internally rejecting everything she appeared to be celebrating. The commitment ceremony scene becomes particularly chilling when viewed through Christine's honest lens. While cameras captured what appeared to be a genuine family recommitment ritual, Christine was internally planning her exit strategy. She describes thinking, "This is ridiculous and I'm not even going to be staying," while publicly pouring sand into a unity container and declaring her devotion to family togetherness. The psychological toll of maintaining these false performances for over a decade is staggering when you really consider what Christine was enduring. She had to smile while being emotionally starved, express gratitude while being financially controlled, and demonstrate family loyalty while being systematically devalued and marginalized within her own household. But the lying wasn't just emotional self-protection, it was a survival strategy within a system that punished authenticity and rewarded compliance. Christine reveals that honest emotional responses triggered Cody's withdrawal of affection and attention, which meant that lying became necessary for maintaining any connection to her husband and securing basic consideration for her children's needs. The most heartbreaking aspect of Christine's confession involves how the lying requirement extended to her children's experiences. She had to model false contentment with a lifestyle that was harming her family while teaching her daughters to accept treatment that she knew was damaging their self-worth and future relationship expectations. Christine describes feeling relief when she finally decided to stop performing and start being authentic on camera. But that authenticity immediately triggered Cody's rejection and increased his controlling behavior. The system was designed to punish truth-telling and reward deception, which explains why the family dynamic became increasingly toxic as individual members started expressing genuine feelings. The scope of the deception extends far beyond individual dishonesty into systematic misrepresentation of polygamous family life. Viewers invested emotionally in what they believed was authentic documentation of an alternative lifestyle, not realizing they were watching carefully choreographed performances designed to promote a specific religious and social agenda. What makes Christine's lying confession particularly complex is how she frames it as both necessary survival and personal failure. She expresses shame about deceiving viewers, while also acknowledging that honesty would have resulted in even more severe consequences for herself and her children within the family structure. The lying game also involved elaborate coordination between family members to maintain consistent narratives across multiple interview sessions and family interactions. Christine describes having to remember which version of events they were presenting publicly versus what actually happened privately, creating an exhausting double consciousness that lasted for years. But perhaps the most insidious element of the systematic lying involves how it protected and enabled the very abusive church practices that the show claimed to be different from. By presenting a sanitized version of polygamous life, they were essentially providing cover for ongoing abuse within their religious community, while enjoying financial benefits from that misrepresentation. The moment Christine stopped lying and started telling the truth, the entire foundation of the show's premise began crumbling, which explains why Cody became so desperate to silence her revelations about what their life was really like behind the cameras and beyond the carefully crafted storylines. And that's when the community of longtime viewers started connecting dots that painted an even more disturbing picture of systematic manipulation. The internet exploded the moment Christine's book revelations started circulating, and the reaction from longtime Sister Wives viewers has been swift, decisive, and absolutely devastating for the show's remaining credibility. Facebook groups that once defended the family are now filled with posts from women feeling manipulated and betrayed by over a decade of systematic deception. The comment sections tell a story of collective awakening that's both heartbreaking and empowering. Women are sharing how they related to Christine's supposed financial struggles while managing their own tight household budgets, not realizing they were watching someone with access to six-figure production benefits perform poverty for entertainment value. Quilting circles and book clubs across the country are processing the cognitive dissonance of having invested emotionally in what they believed was authentic representation of alternative family life. These aren't just casual viewers expressing disappointment, these are dedicated fans who defended the Browns against criticism, promoted their businesses, and genuinely believed they were supporting a family courageously sharing their real experiences. The betrayal runs particularly deep among viewers who saw Christine as a relatable figure navigating familiar challenges. Every woman who's ever stretched a grocery budget while watching Christine worry about household expenses deserves to feel angry about being manipulated into sympathy for manufactured problems. PTA hallway conversations and group text chains are buzzing with revelations as mothers realize they were watching someone perform maternal anxiety while enjoying financial security that would have eliminated most parenting stress. The recognition that Christine's parenting struggles were largely scripted while real mothers dealt with genuine resource limitations has created a profound sense of manipulation that extends far beyond typical reality TV disappointment. Social media analysis reveals that long-term fans are experiencing what psychologists call betrayal trauma, the specific emotional damage that occurs when someone you trusted systematically deceives you over an extended period. These aren't viewers angry about normal reality TV editing or selective storytelling. These are people recognizing that they were deliberately misled about fundamental aspects of the family's actual circumstances. The most vocal criticism is coming from women who promoted Christine's MLM businesses based on her apparent financial authenticity. They purchased products believing they were supporting someone genuinely struggling to build independent income streams, only to discover that Christine's financial independence was already substantially supported by production compensation and benefits. Religious community responses have been equally intense, with many polygamous families feeling that the Browns' deception has damaged legitimate efforts to present their lifestyle in honest terms. Christine's revelations about knowing their church was abusive while publicly promoting it as reformed has created anger within communities that were genuinely trying to distance themselves from harmful practices. The ripple effect is reaching into academic and activist circles where the Browns' story was used as evidence that polygamy could exist without systemic abuse. Researchers and advocates who cited their family as proof of reformed plural marriage are now grappling with the reality that their case study was essentially fabricated through selective truth-telling and hidden financial arrangements. But the community response that's generating the most momentum involves viewers demanding accountability, not just from the Browns, but from the network and production company that enabled and profited from this systematic deception for over 14 years. And that's when the karma bus arrived with perfect timing, delivering consequences that seem almost cosmically designed to balance the scales of justice. The universe has a sense of humor, and it's currently writing checks that Cody Brown can't cash. While he spent decades controlling every aspect of Christine's financial independence, she's now enjoying genuine prosperity with David Woolley, while Cody scrambles to maintain an empire built entirely on manufactured authenticity that's crumbling faster than his carefully constructed public image. Christine's financial transformation reads like a masterclass in how karma operates when women finally escape financial manipulation. She went from begging Cody for basic household expenses to co-owning vacation rental properties and building legitimate business ventures that don't depend on performing trauma for entertainment value. Meanwhile, Cody's income sources are directly tied to maintaining storylines that become less believable with every revelation Christine shares. The ironic reversal becomes even more delicious when you consider the timeline. Cody spent years using financial control as his primary manipulation tool, withholding resources whenever Christine stepped out of line or expressed authentic emotions that didn't serve his preferred narrative. He made her financially dependent on his approval while enjoying production benefits that could have provided her with independent security. Now Christine has achieved the financial independence that Cody worked so hard to prevent, while his own economic prospects depend increasingly on his ability to maintain audience interest in a storyline that she's systematically dismantling through her truth-telling. Every revelation in her book potentially costs him viewers, which translates directly into reduced earning potential from a show that's already struggling with credibility issues. The vacation rental business that Christine has built with David represents everything Cody feared most about her potential independence. She's generating income through her own efforts and business acumen rather than depending on his patriarchal resource distribution system. She's making financial decisions based on her own judgment rather than seeking his approval for every expenditure, but the karma extends beyond simple financial reversal into the realm of narrative control. For decades, Cody dictated which stories could be told, how family events were interpreted, and what version of their reality was presented to the world. Christine had to filter her experiences through his approval and perform happiness that served his preferred family mythology. Now she controls her own narrative completely, while Cody finds himself increasingly unable to manage the stories being told about him. Christine's book revelations are generating media coverage that he can't influence or redirect. Her authentic voice is drowning out his attempts at damage control, and his demands for silence are only amplifying the very revelations he's trying to suppress. The financial karma becomes even more pronounced when you consider how Cody's controlling behavior is now limiting his own earning potential. His inability to maintain positive relationships with his former wives means he's lost access to the family dynamic storylines that made the show compelling in the first place. His attempts to control Christine's narrative are backfiring by generating more attention for her truth-telling and making him appear even more controlling and manipulative to remaining viewers. The production perks that once subsidized his patriarchal lifestyle are now threatened by the very authenticity he spent years trying to suppress. Christine's financial independence has freed her to expose the system that once benefited them both, but now primarily threatens his continued access to the entertainment industry benefits that have supported his lifestyle for over a decade. And that economic pressure is intensifying as legal and ethical implications start catching up with years of systematic deception. The legal ramifications emerging from Christine's revelations extend far beyond typical reality TV contract disputes into territory that could fundamentally reshape how entertainment companies handle family-based programming. When a show's central premise involves financial hardship while the family enjoys substantial undisclosed compensation, questions arise about fraudulent misrepresentation and consumer protection that go straight to the heart of entertainment industry ethics. Contract law experts are already analyzing the implications of Christine's disclosures about production agreements that apparently required family members to maintain false narratives about their actual circumstances. The legal question becomes whether audiences have any recourse when reality programming involves systematic deception about fundamental aspects of the participants' lives, particularly when that deception influences viewer purchasing decisions related to family businesses and endorsed products. The MLM connection adds another layer of potential legal complexity. Christine promoted various network marketing products while portraying herself as someone genuinely struggling with financial independence, not disclosing that she had access to substantial production benefits that eliminated most of the economic pressures she claimed motivated her business ventures. Consumer protection laws typically require disclosure of material benefits that might influence endorsement credibility. Employment and contract law issues become particularly murky when family members are essentially required to perform emotional labor that contradicts their authentic experiences as a condition of continued compensation. Christine describes feeling trapped by contractual obligations that prevented her from expressing genuine emotions or making authentic life choices without jeopardizing her family's financial security through production benefits. The intersection of entertainment law and family dynamics creates unprecedented ethical territory when children are involved in long-term deceptive programming. Christine's book reveals that her children were essentially raised within a performance framework that required them to present false versions of their family reality for public consumption, raising questions about informed consent and child welfare protection in reality programming. Religious freedom issues also complicate the legal landscape, particularly regarding the Browns' acknowledgement that they knew their church engaged in abusive practices while publicly promoting it as reformed. Using a television platform to misrepresent religious practices while knowing those practices cause harm to vulnerable community members potentially crosses into areas of fraud and public endangerment. The producer's departure adds another dimension to potential legal accountability. Tim Gibbons invested years in promoting a narrative that he eventually discovered was fundamentally deceptive, but his exit also suggests recognition that continued involvement might expose him to professional and legal consequences for enabling systematic misrepresentation of family circumstances. Network liability becomes particularly interesting when considering how much production companies knew about the gap between the Browns' public narrative and private reality. Did network executives understand they were profiting from content that systematically misrepresented participants' actual circumstances? Were audience research and advertising rates influenced by manufactured storylines about financial struggles? The most significant legal implications may emerge from the intersection of contract obligations and personal liberation. Christine's book suggests that entertainment contracts can create trapped situations where family members can't make authentic life choices without facing severe financial penalties, which raises questions about whether such agreements constitute a form of economic coercion. Consumer class action possibilities are already being discussed in legal forums, particularly regarding viewers who purchased MLM products or supported family businesses based on false representations of financial circumstances. The potential damages extend beyond simple disappointment into measurable economic harm for consumers who made purchasing decisions based on systematically deceptive marketing presentations. But the most explosive legal implications are still emerging as investigators start examining whether the Browns' systematic deception violated specific broadcasting standards and consumer protection regulations that could trigger federal oversight of reality programming practices. Christine Brown has drawn her line in the sand, and it's carved deeper than Cody's ego can handle. Her book doesn't just close a chapter on their marriage, it slams shut an entire era of manufactured polygamous propaganda while opening a door to authentic storytelling that terrifies everyone who profited from the original deception. The ultimatum hiding in Christine's epilogue reads like a declaration of independence from the entire Sister Wives industrial complex. She's essentially telling the world that season 20 represents her final performance in this particular theater of manipulation, after which she's retiring from the business of performing her trauma for public consumption and Cody's financial benefit. What makes this ultimatum so powerful is how it strips away Cody's remaining leverage over family storylines. For years, he used the threat of withdrawal and abandonment to keep wives compliant with production demands and narrative requirements. But Christine's financial independence through her relationship with David and her own business ventures means Cody's approval or disapproval no longer impacts her economic security or personal happiness. The producers face an impossible situation as they attempt to craft season 20 content around Christine's refusal to continue beyond this final season. How do you create compelling television when your most authentic and articulate family member is publicly documenting the systematic deception that your entire franchise was built upon? How do you maintain audience investment when viewers now know that previous seasons involved elaborate performances funded by undisclosed compensation packages? Christine's declaration that she doesn't want to revisit her past with Cody anymore creates additional narrative challenges for a show that depends on rehashing family conflicts and relationship dynamics. If she's genuinely moving forward with her life and refusing to engage with Cody's continued manipulation tactics, what storylines remain that don't involve forcing her back into patterns she's already escaped? The karma equation reaches perfect balance when you consider how Christine's authenticity is now threatening the financial stability of everyone who profited from her previous compliance with false narratives. Her truth-telling is directly impacting the earning potential of producers, network executives, and remaining family members who still depend on Sister Wives' income streams. Cody's demands for silence become increasingly desperate as he realizes that Christine's authentic voice is more compelling than any storyline he could manufacture about redemption or family healing. His attempts to control her narrative from a position of zero actual authority only highlight how completely the power dynamic has shifted in her favor. The broader entertainment industry is watching this situation carefully because Christine's revelations could establish precedents for how reality TV participants can reclaim their narratives and expose systematic deception without facing legal retaliation from production companies. Her book represents a blueprint for authentic storytelling that could inspire other reality TV veterans to share their own behind-the-scenes truths. But perhaps the most satisfying element of this entire reckoning involves how Christine's refusal to be silenced is forcing accountability throughout the entire system that enabled and profited from her manipulation. From Cody's patriarchal control to producer Tim's failed social experiment to network executives who looked the other way while families performed false realities for entertainment profit. The woman who spent decades being told what she couldn't say is now determining exactly which truths get shared and which stories deserve to be heard. And something tells me that Christine's next chapter will be far more compelling than anything the Sister Wives production team could possibly script. So what do you think happens when the truth teller refuses to be silenced? Should Christine continue exposing the reality behind their reality TV empire, or is season 20 the perfect place to end this particular story? Let me know in the comments, and tap like, hit subscribe, keep notifications on because a fresh video is already queued up, and something tells me the next round of Sister Wives revelations will be even juicier than the last.